Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the second lecture of the course Training and Development. As you know, we were discussing in the first lecture that there are different stages of adult development, mental complexity. We were also discussing that the overall complexity of the world is increasing day by day. And therefore, human beings, they have to cope with this increasing complexity of the world by increasing their mental ability and their mental complexity. So I had told you that there are 3 levels of adult development. An adult mind could be at any 3 levels of mental complexity. The first level is the socialized mind. The second level is the self-authoring mind, and the third one is self-transforming mind, and that is the highest level of mental complexity. Just as a recap, I would like to tell you, to revise, that a socialized mind is the one that is influenced by the external environment of the person. What the person does is influenced by the external environment in which that person exists. The self-authoring mind, that person can step back from his or her personal environment and take a stance of its own. That person can make decisions on its own, can make choices on its own, and that person can have opinions of his own. The third level is that of self-transforming mind, in which the person can step back from his own from his own stance, from his own thinking, from his own opinions, and analyze his own mind, analyze his own statements, analyze the own system that he carries, and therefore that person is able to take different perspectives of the world. So that person does not see the world from only one lens. That person is able to see the world from multiple lenses. Okay, so that is what we had discussed in the first lecture, in the first session. What we are going to discuss now is that these different people on these 3 different levels of mental complexity, they send and receive information in a different way. जो information उनके पास आती है, आपको पता है हमारे पास information मुख्तलिफ stimulus से आती है. एक तो हमारी senses से हमारे पास information आती है. We can touch, we can hear, we can see, we can smell, we can taste. So हमें अपने environment से information जो है वो receive होती है. So what information we take in, that depends on our mental filters. That depends on the processor over here that we have. That depends on our mind. The kind of mind that we have, that kind of information processing goes on in that. So the mental ability has a lot to do with how information is processed. So how we take in information and how we send information. What kind of information do we want to send? So that is dependent a lot on what kind of mental level are we on. So how does a person with a socialized mind send and receive information? As I had told you, that a person with a socialized mind, that is influenced by the external environment. So that person does not have a seat of his own, judgment of his own. That person is influenced by the external environment. So वो इंसान जो कि external environment से influence हो रहा है, वो किस तरह information जो है वो send करेगा, वो क्या बात करेगा, वो क्या बोलेगा. वो obviously वो बोलेगा जो उसे लगेगा कि दूसरे सुनना चाहते हैं. So the information that the person with a socialized mind will send will be the information or the communication that he or she thinks that the other people, they want to listen. So this kind of a person will not easily make contradictions. That person is not going to go into disagreements. And especially in an organizational environment where there is a lot of competition, where there is a lot of pressure, this person is not going to say things that will probably offend others or that are in disagreement with the overall group. So, have you heard about the concept of groupthink? Groupthink is a psychological phenomena in which people in a group, they conform with the opinion of the group. They do not disagree with the opinion of the group because of the group pressure. क्या होता है कि जब हम ग्रुप में काम कर रहे होते हैं, जब हम एक लोगों की सामने कुछ कर रहे होते हैं, इकट्ठे बैठ के कुछ कर रहे होते हैं, तो उस वक्त हम वो करने की कोशिश करते हैं जो सारा ग्रुप कर रहा है. आपने देखा ही होगा, आपने खुद भी एक्सपीरियंस किया होगा एज स्टूडेंट्स, अगर ग्रुप में कोई काम हो रहा है या ग्रुप में कोई ओपिनियन जनरेट हो रहा है तो आप बहुत आराम से उस ओपिनियन को कॉन्ट्रडिक्ट नहीं करेंगे, बिकॉज 90% or 80% of the group members are saying one thing, so you will definitely think कि इसको कॉन्ट्रडिक्ट करना चाहिए, डिसएग्री करना चाहिए, बिकॉज देयर इज ग्रुप प्रेशर. सो उसकी वजह से एक फिनोमेना, साइकोलॉजिकल फिनोमेना जो है वो डेवलप होता है ग्रुप थिंक का. ग्रुप थिंक का जो फिनोमेना है वो सोशलाइज्ड माइंड्स के अंदर बहुत ज्यादा प्रोमिनेंट होता है. पीपल विद द सोशलाइज्ड माइंड आर victim of the group think phenomena to a greater extent, because these people find it more difficult to contradict or to disagree with something. This psychological phenomena of groupthink or group conformity that was analyzed by a researcher called Solomon Asch. That person conducted some experiments on people working in groups. So, what Solomon Asch did, that he invited people, he invited students and told them that they are going to be subject to a psychological experiment. Psychology का experiment के लिए उसने कुछ लोगों को, students को invite किया. तो imagine yourself that you go on for a psychological experiment and there are 6 or 7 other people as well जो आपको ये लगता है कि आपके साथ ही psychological experiment में participate करने के लिए आए हैं. So you are supposed to sit in a group of 6 to 7 people. अब experiment का design क्या है कि basically वो जो 6 और 7 लोग आपके साथ बैठे हुए हैं, they are actually not participants, they are allies of the researcher. So, उन्होंने जो कहना है, उन्होंने जो बोलना है, that is totally scripted. So, you are the only one who is the participant. So, what happens is, in experiments में, what Solomon Asch did, that he showed 2 cards to these participants. You can see those cards on the slide. So what can you see on those 2 cards? There are 3 lines on one card and there is 1 line on the other card. You can clearly see that the single line on this card is equal to line number C. अच्छा, अब आपने तो ये देख लिया कि जो लाइन है कार्ड पे वो लाइन नंबर सी के इक्वल है, आपको क्लियरली नजर आ रहा है. अब आपसे पूछते हैं जो एक्सपेरिमेंट रन कर रहे हैं, वो कहते हैं कि आपने एक कागज पे ये लिखना है कि लाइन जो है वो लाइन, जो सिंगल लाइन है वो किस लाइन के बराबर है. तो आप कागज पे लिख लेते हैं लाइन नंबर सी. फिर वो आपसे कहता है, जो एक्सपेरिमेंट रन कर रहा है, वो ये कहता है कि अब सब लोग बताएं कि कौन सी लाइन जो है वो इस लाइन के बराबर है. You are supposed to give the input in the last. अच्छा, अब ये एक्सपेरिमेंट जो है ये डिफरेंट ट्रायल्स में रन किया जाता है, जिसमें कुछ लोग जो हैं वो कुछ में करेक्ट आंसर देते हैं, कुछ में इनकरेक्ट देते हैं, कुछ में सारे जो लोग हैं वो इनकरेक्ट आंसर देते हैं. तो जब सारे लोग इनकरेक्ट आंसर देते हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल वो लाइन ए कह देते हैं या लाइन बी कह देते हैं, और सब बाकी के 6 लोग जो हैं वो लाइन ए को कह रहे हैं कि वो सिंगल लाइन के बराबर है, तो व्हाट विल यू डू? You are the last one to give input. So what are you going to do? Are you going to say that no, everybody else is wrong? Or are you going to say that whatever the answer is being given by the group, that should go as the right answer? आप क्या करेंगे? Will you give the right answer? Or will you give the answer that is been given by all the other members of the group? Well, I will tell you the results of Solomon Ash's experiment. What he found out was that on average, about 1/3, 32% of the participants who were placed in the situation went along and conformed with the clearly incorrect majority on the critical trials. And over the 12 critical trials, about 75% of the participants conformed at least once, and 25% of the participants never conformed. So 75% participants कम से कम एक दफा तो ग्रुप के प्रेशर में जरूर आए, और सिर्फ 25% participants जो थे वो ग्रुप के प्रेशर में कभी भी नहीं आए. So this means that these people were being influenced by the external environment. So a person with a socialized mind, as we were discussing, will send information that he or she thinks that other people want to receive. And as we had discussed last time, that there are more and more people on the lower levels of mental complexity and lesser people on the higher ones. So this experiment conforms with that finding as well, that more number of people are still on the socialized level of mind. So people with a socialized level of mind will not send information or will not communicate if they think that others will not like it, or they think that they are pressurized by the environment or their group. So these people send information in this manner. How about receiving information? You know, we are subject to, we are exposed to innumerable stimulus from the environment all the time. So we have to filter the information, we have to sift the information that and take in the information that is important to us, that makes any sense, that is meaningful to us. So people with a socialized mind, what happens is that they have very few filters in their mind. They take in too much information from very small pieces of information that they are exposed to. So for example, if a person is sent an email by his boss that you don't come on time or you are a little bit irregular, you need to correct this thing, that person is going to get boggled with that information. That person will get highly stupefied with this information. उसको जब ये ईमेल मिलेगी तो वो परेशान हो जाएगा कि इसका क्या मतलब है. Boss doesn't like me, I'm not working well, I'm not performing well, or there are so many things that are going to come into this person's mind, because the boss has only said that you are a little bit late and you need to become a regular on your schedule, and that was it in the email. But this person will take a lot of information or a lot of meaning out of that only one or two sentences. And if the boss finds out that this is what that person was perceiving out of that, he would say, what? I never meant this. I never wanted to say this. That's not what I wanted to say. So these people, they take in too much information because they have very few filters in their mind. So they are highly sensitive to information. They pick far beyond the required message, and they give a lot of attention to imagined subtexts. Subtext that are not actually coming from the communication, not coming from the information, but they perceive those things that, okay, this is also possible out of this, that is also possible out of this information. So they create a whole mess of information in their mind from what they receive, and that's why they are unable to have a judgment of their own, because they take in too much information. So they send information which they think is required to be said, and they receive information that is too much for their minds to process effectively. Okay, so that is how information is sent and received by a socialized mind. What about a self-authoring mind? As I told you, that a self-authoring mind that has a plan of its own. They are agenda-driving people. So they want people to follow their plan, to follow their agenda. So when you want people to follow you, how do you communicate with them? How do you talk to them? When you want people to follow you, you say those things that will make people follow you. You say information that needs to be heard in order to forward your plan. Whereas in the socialized mind, this is not the reason why information is sent what people want to hear. They don't want to drive their agenda, whereas a self-authoring mind will also send information which other people want to hear, but they send that information to drive their own agenda. So an example of that is that a self-authoring mind would communicate with people so that people will let him sit behind the wheel and drive. He's got his own map. उसके पास अपना मैप है जिसके ऊपर उसने जाना है. वो बात इसलिए करेगा कि लोग उसको गाड़ी चलाने दें और उस मैप पे जाने दें. Whereas जो socialized mind है, वो information, वो communicate इसलिए करेगा कि वो उसको गाड़ी में साथ बिठा लें और जो उनका मैप है उसके ऊपर उसको ले जाएं, लेकिन उसको गाड़ी में बिठा लें. So that is an example of how you can distinguish between how self-authoring mind and socialized mind, they communicate. So how these people receive information? People with a self-authoring mind, how do they receive information? I told you that these people have a filter of their own. They see things according to the lens that they have created. So they have an agenda, a plan, a thinking, an opinion, an attitude, and they will receive information that fits that agenda or that attitude. So whatever fits their filter, whatever goes through their filter is those things that are acceptable to their attitudes or their opinions. So these people will be very easily stereotyped, because if they hold an opinion about a particular group of people, अगर वो किसी के बारे में एक attitude रखते हैं, तो वो attitude hold करेंगे. अगर उनको information receive भी होती है which contradicts their opinion or attitude about a particular group of people, वो उसको ignore कर देंगे. वो उस information को receive ही नहीं करेंगे. That information will not have any weight in their mind. So, because they have an agenda, a plan of their own, So they will only receive information that supports that plan or that supports their attitude or opinion. So there is priority given to information that is received by these people. तो पहली प्रायोरिटी किस तरह की इंफॉर्मेशन को दी जाती है? पहली प्रायोरिटी उस इंफॉर्मेशन को दी जाती है, उस कम्युनिकेशन को दी जाती है जो कि वो सुनना चाहते हैं. So something that supports their plan, something that is required by them is given the first priority. जो इंफॉर्मेशन वो मांगते हैं, जो इंफॉर्मेशन वो रिक्वायर करते हैं, जो इंफॉर्मेशन वो the information that is sought by them, that information is given the first priority. That information comes into mind. तो वो जो बात पूछते हैं उसका जवाब उनको मिले, वो उस सबसे पहले उनके माइंड में रिसीव होता है. So the information that they ask or the information that is sought by them, that is given the first priority. कि उन्हें जो सुनना है या उन्हें जो जवाब चाहिए वो इंफॉर्मेशन उनको सबसे पहले मिल जाए. तो उसकी सबसे पहले प्रायोरिटी रिसेप्शन की पहली प्रायोरिटी होगी. The second priority will be given to the information which is relevant to their plan of action, which supports their plan of action, which they have not sought, जो कि उन्होंने पूछा नहीं है, जिसके बारे में उन्होंने क्वेश्चन नहीं किया, लेकिन वो इंफॉर्मेशन उनके प्लान को सपोर्ट कर रही है. सो अगर आप एक मैनेजर हैं और आप एक नया प्रोडक्ट जो है वो लॉन्च करना चाह रहे हैं और आपका साथ में कॉलीग आपको आके कहता है कि ये प्रोडक्ट डेफिनेटली सक्सेसफुल होगा और यही आपका भी ख्याल है, तो आपका ये एटीट्यूड रीइंफोर्स हो जाएगा कि यस, देयर इज समबडी हु हैज कम एंड सेड दैट दिस प्रोडक्ट इज गोइंग टू बी सक्सेसफुल. Whereas if you are sticking to that product that you want to launch and you really think that that is going to be very successful, and another colleague comes and tell you that I have some reservations about this. This is probably not going to work. So if you have a self-authoring mind, you will just ignore that information. You will say this person has got these biases, he doesn't want me to succeed, or there are so many other things that may come up to your mind that will make that information minimal, that will reduce the effect of that information and your mind will not receive it. So the second priority is given to the information that is relevant to what your plan is. And third priority? Oops, there is no third priority. So these people don't receive any other kind of information. Information that is required and information that is relevant to their mind. Any other kind of information that goes away, that does not get received by their minds. They don't process anything else that is not relevant to their attitude or that is not relevant to their plan. So that is how information is sent and received by a self-authoring mind. Then what about a self-transforming mind? How is information sent or received by a self-transforming mind? Self-transforming mind, as I told you, that person is able to step back from his own thinking, from his own perspectives, and analyze his own perspective as well. So that person does not stick to the map that he has got and he wants to drive on that map because he thinks that that map is absolutely correct. Yes, that person will be confident that here is a map I've got, I want to go through this route, but what is going to be the difference between a self-authoring mind and a self-transforming mind? A self-transforming mind will be ready to take contradictions. So if, for example, somebody comes and tells them that this particular map is probably not good enough, that person would be ready to receive that information without any biases and with a rational mind. So this person has got its own map, they have their own filters, but they are ready to analyze the map, they are ready to analyze their own filters. They know that at one point their opinion may be correct, but the world is changing continuously and the time is changing continuously. While communicating, these people, they don't only advance their own agenda, they are also looking for modification and expansion of their agenda. So they seek information that may lead or their team to enhance, refine, or alter the original design or make it more inclusive. So they are always looking for information that can improve their design, that can improve their thinking, that can improve their understanding. So as I told you, that these people, they lead in order to learn. They want to learn from other people as well. They want to learn from other opinions as well. So these people, they lead to learn. And they want to continuously refine and enhance the perspectives that they hold. So these people, they also receive information that can be used to refine or that can be used to advance their plan or that can be used to advance their perspectives. Why? क्यों ये लोग ऐसी इंफॉर्मेशन इनके पास आती है जो कि इनके प्लान्स को या इनके पर्सपेक्टिव को इम्प्रूव कर सकती है? People come and tell them that this thing may not work, इसमें ये प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, ये वीकनेसेस हैं, ये खराबियां हैं और उसकी वजह से ये काम नहीं चलेगा. इन लोगों के पास ऐसे लोग आते हैं ये बताने के लिए. क्यों आते हैं? Because these people have a reputation of being good listeners. These people have a reputation of being receptive to information. लोगों को पता होता है कि उन्होंने किस के पास जाके ये बताना है और वो उससे पॉजिटिव रिस्पॉन्स लेगा. उनको ये पता होता है कि अगर वो किसी एक ऐसे इंसान के पास जाके ये बताएंगे जो अफेंड हो जाएगा, जिसको फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा या जो वो इंफॉर्मेशन रिसीव नहीं करेगा, तो वो ऐसे इंसान के पास नहीं जाएंगे. लेकिन अगर उनको पता होगा कि वो जो इंफॉर्मेशन दे रहे हैं, वो जो एनालिसिस प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं, वो एनालिसिस जो रिसीव करने वाला है वो सुनेगा. एक तो पहली बात ये कि सुनेगा, फिर ये कि उससे अफेंड नहीं होगा, और तीसरी बात ये कि वो उससे असर भी लेगा, तो लोग उसके पास जाएंगे. वरना people they don't have energy or they don't have time or everybody is busy. So nobody will go to a person where they know that it will be a waste of time. So these people, they are able to receive information that is able to improve their perspective or that is able to improve their plans. So इस तरह इनकी जो प्रोडक्टिविटी है या इनकी जो परफॉर्मेंस है वो और बढ़ जाती है. अच्छा, so we have discussed that there are 3 levels: socialized mind, self-authoring mind and self-transforming mind. What can managers gain from that? हमारे लिए as HR managers, as general managers, हमारे लिए ये information या ये concept, इसका क्या फायदा है? What can we gain out of that? So ये पता लगाने के लिए कि इस इंफॉर्मेशन का इन लेवल्स ऑफ मेंटल कम्प्लेक्सिटी का कोई ताल्लुक है मैनेजेरियल पर्सपेक्टिव के साथ, वी नीड टू रिलेट समथिंग विद दीज लेवल्स ऑफ मेंटल एबिलिटी. सो हमें क्या फायदा कि कोई सेल्फ ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग माइंड में है या सेल्फ ऑथरिंग माइंड पे है या सोशलाइज्ड माइंड के लेवल पे है. व्हाट इज दैट गोइंग टू what are we going to gain from that? So for that, we need to make some relationships, we need to make some connections. So connection जो best चीज है किसके साथ बनाया जा सकता है? वो connection ये है कि is there any relationship between these levels of mental ability and performance or competence of people in organizations? So uske liye there was a study conducted on 21 CEOs of successful American organizations which had an annual gross revenue of more than 5 billion. So 21 CEOs of these successful organizations were chosen to be analyzed, what kind of mental ability they have and how is that related to their performance. In addition to that, 21 promising managers who had these abilities to be promoted to higher levels, who had the ability to be promoted to the CEO levels, जिनमें ये potential नजर आता था, who were promising managers, they were also chosen for this study to make a relationship between these two variables. The mental complexity of a person was assessed through a subject-object interview. And the performance and the competence of the managers and CEOs was analyzed through 7 variables. These variables are challenge existing processes, inspire shared vision, manage conflict, solve problems, delegate, empower, build relationships. So the competence or performance of these managers and CEOs was analyzed through these 7 dimensions. The subject-object interview was used to analyze the mental capability or the mental complexity of these CEOs. The subject-object interview is an established way of determining a person's mental complexity. The subject-object interview is not an analysis of a person's psychological makeup. It is not even a measure of a person's intelligence quotient or IQ level. It is possible that a person with quite a high level of IQ, let's say 125, may be at any level of these mental complexity levels. So this is a concept, this is a phenomena that analyzes a person's ability to make meaning out of the world. How a person is able to make meaning out of the world that they are existing in. So this is done through a 60 to 90 minutes interview in which the interview is an expert of conducting this subject-object interview. No, a lay person cannot conduct this subject-object interview because it is a highly specialized skill to conduct a subject-object interview. In this, the interviewer that tries to analyze the content of the meaning that the person makes out of the world and the structure of the meaning that a person makes out of the world. So the person would ask, the interviewer would ask that what are the things that have made you angry, that have made you emotional, that have made you sad, that have made you happy in the past few years, and tell me the story about that. So what are the things that make that person happy or angry or sad? That is the content of that interview, the content of the meaning that is made out of the world by this person. And then this person asks, the interviewer asks the interviewee that why do you feel sad or angry or anxious about this particular situation? So the why is the structure. The why is going to tell that whether a person is on a socialized mind or a self-authoring mind or a self-transforming mind level. So why this person becomes angry about a particular situation or about a particular person, that is going to determine what level of mental complexity does he have. Anyway, the subject-object interview and how that is conducted, that is a very lengthy discussion. But the subject-object interview is used to determine a person's level of mental complexity. So we were trying to analyze that whether there is a link between the level of mental complexity and performance and competence of people working in organizations. So you can see in the slide that on the x-axis there is the level of mental complexity, and on the y-axis you have the effectiveness or competence of the managers or CEOs. So you can see that mental complexity is divided into levels of 2 to 3, 3, 3 to 4, 4, and 4 to 5. And you can see in the index that 3 is a socialized mind, 4 is a self-authoring mind, and 5 is a self-transforming mind. And on the effectiveness axis, the level of effectiveness is 1, highly ineffective, 2, ineffective, 3, neutral or mixed, 4, effective, and 5, highly effective. And you can also see that the CEOs that are analyzed separately and the middle managers, the promising middle managers, are analyzed in the next row. What can you see from this graph? The first thing that is revealed, the first thing that you can see immediately is that there is an apparent and evident link between mental complexity and effectiveness of the CEOs and managers. So, ये तो एक हमें बात पता चली कि mental complexity, higher mental complexity leads to higher performance. आपको शायद ये पता हो कि higher IQ does not lead to higher performance. So this is one thing that leads to, or that is related to, more effectiveness, more performance. The second thing that you can clearly see is that no CEO is on the socialized mind. Most of the CEOs are on the self-authoring mind, but there are few that are on the self-transforming mind, and those who are on the self-transforming mind perform much better than those who are on the self-authoring mind. Another thing that you can analyze from this graph, from this picture, is that more than half of the promising middle managers are below the self-authoring mind. So there are a large majority of people who are not even at the self-authoring mind in the promising middle managers category. So that means that, and those who are on the higher categories or who are on the higher levels, they perform better than those who are on the lower levels. So this is what we have found from this particular study, that mental complexity that is related to better performance, better effectiveness. And those who are at higher level of mental complexity are able to perform better than those individuals who are at the lower levels. But then again, we need to ask that, do we need people on the higher level of mental ability? And why do we need more and more people on the higher level of mental ability, on a higher level of mental complexity? Why do people need to be able to write their own agendas? They need to write their own perspectives. They need to take initiatives. Why is that necessary? So that is necessary because that has become important because of the changing environment of this world. So I would like to read an excerpt from Brandon's book, the 6 pillars of self-esteem, Brandon says that in the past 2 or 3 decades, extraordinary developments have occurred in the America and global economies. We now live in a global economy characterized by rapid change, accelerating scientific and technological breakthroughs, and an unprecedented level of competitiveness. These developments create demand for higher levels of education and training than were required of previous generations. Everyone acquainted with business cultures knows this. What is not understood is that these developments also create new demands on our psychological resources. Specifically, these developments ask for a greater capacity for innovation, self-management, personal responsibility, and self-direction. This is not just asked at the top, it is asked at every level of a business enterprise, from senior management to first-line supervisor and even to entry-level personnel. Today, organizations need not only an unprecedentedly higher level of knowledge and skill among all those who participate, but also a higher level of independence, self-reliance, self-trust, and the capacity to exercise initiative. This was written in 1995, so this is again 15, 18 years ago. And things, as you know, that in the past 1 decade after this millennium has started, things have started changing much more rapidly. So that means that it is required that people at every level of the organization are able to take initiative. They are able to direct, they are able to create, they are able to innovate. So they are able to contribute to the organization and not just receive direction and do whatever they are told. So a few decades ago, it was sufficient for workforce to be good team players. It was sufficient that people with a socialized mind who can be good team players, who can be faithful followers, who can be easily directed. It was sufficient that such kind of a workforce is there, and that was sufficient for good effectiveness or performance of the organization. But now the situation has changed. Now we need to develop the mind to that level where people are not just good team players, they are not just good followers, they are able to determine their own perspectives, they are able to take initiative, and they are able to self-direct themselves. As you know, कि organizations में empowerment, de-layering, flatter organizations का concept जो है वो management में you hear it so frequently. So जब आप लोगों को empower कर रहे हैं, जब आप उन पे responsibility डाल रहे हैं, जब आप उनको authority दे रहे हैं, आप organization को flat कर रहे हैं, so इसका मतलब है कि जब लोगों के पास power होगी, तो फिर उनके पास अपना decision लेने का, initiative लेने की ability भी होनी चाहिए. So a few decades ago, it was sufficient to have a lot of socialized mind and a few self-authoring minds who can command and control. Because there were set agendas, there were set plans, and the leaders or the managers, they needed to be self-authoring, they needed to be at the level of self-authoring mind so that they are able to command and control. But now, we need more and more people within the workforce to be on the self-authoring level and the leaders to be on the self-transforming level, so that they are able to initiate change. They are able to mobilize change. And how change can be mobilized? That can be only mobilized when people are ready to take different perspectives, when they are ready to take information from different sources. So we need leaders who are on a self-transforming level so that they are able to initiate the change that is required according to the particular context of this world at this moment. So we have said that we need people with higher level of mental complexity at all levels of the organization. But what is the situation of the population? Do we have people on the self-authoring and the higher levels of mental ability, or there is a gap? So for that, there were 2 different studies conducted to analyze how many people within the population are there on the socialized mind or the self-authoring mind or the self-transforming mind. So the analysis of these 2 studies is presented in this graph. As you can see, that study A had 342 participants and study B had 497 participants that were totally unrelated to each other. This is the same kind of graph that we had seen in the previous session. On the x-axis we have time and on the y-axis we have mental complexity. The results of study A are on the upper side of the graph and the results of the study B are on the lower side of the graph. You can see that the results are quite similar to each other, and the alarming situation is that a very few number of people are on the highest level of mental complexity, on the self-transforming level, and more than 58% people in both the studies, they are not on the self-authoring level. So about 58% of the population is not even on the self-authoring level. So there is a big gap between what is required and what is available in the present population. But the good news is that researchers have studied that this level of mental complexity can be developed. How that can be developed, that goes into a very long detail, but this can be developed, and this is the responsibility of the training and development function of the human resource management of an organization. So the purpose of discussing all this mental complexity and its relationship with performance and presenting all these results to you was that it is now in the hands of the people who are responsible for training and developing their human resource that can upgrade the ability of the people from the levels that they are existing at this time to the level that is required by the organizations of this world at this present moment. So the challenge for today's leaders is that they have to develop their own teams, they have to develop their people, and they have to develop their own selves. Because leaders are the people who can bring change. As I told you earlier, that the world is becoming more and more complex. And moreover, change is becoming more and more rapid. So in previous times, the world was becoming complex, but it was not so rapid. It was not so fast. But in present times, change has become much more faster than a few centuries ago. And human capabilities, they are not able to cope with this change. So the responsibility or the challenge for today's leaders is that they have to develop themselves, they have to develop their people, and they have to develop their teams and their organizations. So development is one of the major responsibilities of today's leaders, today's managers. And this is true throughout the world. This is not restricted to any particular culture or at any particular economy. All over the world, leaders need to develop their organizations, their people. And if they think that talent is something that they can go and find from out there. Talent is something that is available out there. That is not going to be the case. They are going to be at a disadvantage if they think like that. So leaders, they have to develop the talent that is required according to the particular situation of their organization. And the responsibility on them is to develop and provide such kind of a culture and such kind of an environment in which they can grow themselves and their people can grow along with them. I hope you have enjoyed this discussion. In this discussion, we have discussed about the different levels of mental complexity, how they relate to performance, what is the gap, what is the importance of improving the level of mental complexity in today's time, and what is the challenge for today's leaders in this particular context. So, in the next lecture or in the next session, we are going to discuss the current implications or the current factors that are affecting the process or the function of training and development in organizations. So until next time, Allah Hafiz.